Thank you very much for making time for us. Quite a time the country now is reflecting on devolution as a system of governance. Now you're Speaker, but you are Governor, Bungoma County, the first. Talk to us about that experience for you and the people starting out.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think first and foremost, it was a very exciting moment to have been elected as the first governor of Bungoma County. Mm-hmm. For me, it was a very exciting moment because I had studied decentralization at university when I was doing my master's degree program. Right. Decentralization was my thesis, and I had also worked out in the field as a district commissioner, as a district officer. So I think being a governor was going to be maybe just something more concrete than what I had done in the field in provincial administration and the theory that I had learned about devolution and decentralization. Mm-hmm. So,
and this was decentralization of governments? And
decentralization of governments, you know. Mm-hmm. Of course, in theory, we have devolution, we had delegation and deconcentration, but now we had gotten into devolution. Right. So as a first governor, I thought it was going to be a very good time for me to practice what I had learned in theory, but most important, to touch the lives of the people of Bungoma in terms of the vision that I had for them. Remember, as I campaigned, I had a manifesto which was based on certain objectives, like the economic pillar, political pillar, and the social pillar. So I went out there, and of course the experience was, one, I had to put in place structures. Remember, we were starting from zero. There was nothing. True. So there was no reference point. I had to go start a whole system, get my CEC members, who are like the county ministers, get the public service board to recruit all other officers that were going to work for the county government. Right. Having done that, then embark now on the real development issues in terms of the economic development and social development. So I did that. But of course, as we were doing that, one of the challenges that I remember, and I expected that to happen, was that the expectations of the people were in the skies. Mm-hmm. They knew that they thought with the devolution, you know, the way it was hyped,
life is going to change.
Life was going to change, like you switch on electricity and things will change.
Right.
So there was a lot of pressure on delivery, and you know, most Kenyans, most people don't believe in you know, things they don't see. They believe in seeing is believing. Yeah, kusema na kutenda. They wanted to see roads, they wanted to see hospitals. They didn't care whether you are working out, you know, like you need
Which is the essence of devolution.
CIDP, yeah. But
services closer to the people, power
yes,
closer to the people.
Participation, of course, is one of the great aspects. But what I'm saying is that the expectations were high in the skies. Mm-hmm. So we started then rolling out some of the things that we had talked about. My greatest fear, and which turned out to be true, was the balance between politics and service delivery. Some of us, if you look at the first governors, majority of them were technocrats. There are people who came from the private sector, people who came from government. We had very few politicians. And, you know, for a technocrat, focus is on service delivery. We were not very good at politicking. So I went and embarked on what I could do for the people of Bungoma. I identified the areas that I thought I would address. One was infrastructure. When I took over, the road network in Bungoma had totally collapsed. Mm-hmm. So I started by, you know, sorting out the roads in town, at least putting tarmac, repairing those that were completely dilapidated. By the time I was finishing 4 years, at least even small towns that had never seen tarmac, for example, Kimilili, Cheptais, Kapsokwany, now had tarmac.
And speaking of roads and infrastructure, let me take you further on that, because it's still a conversation ongoing now.
Yes. About
the classification of roads, and that's tarmac with county governments and national governments. So there appears to be some collusion when it comes to that. How did you navigate?
Yeah, there was a big problem. But for me, one, the money that I used, I embarked on the roads that I could fix. I didn't want to get into the politics of which road belongs to who, because at the end of the day, Mwananchi wants a road. He doesn't care whether it is the national government or the county government fixing the road. That's why I started with the urban roads, because those were very clear. And then the feeder roads, because again, before you go on to big roads, you really need to fix the feeder roads, like, for the case of Bungoma, from Mount Elgon, because Mount Elgon was completely impassable, fix the feeder roads. Then one of the roads that, by the time I left, which we had entered, and I think I was the first county government to enter into an agreement with the national government that we conjointly tarmac the road, so that the national government was going to do 50%, the county government was going to do 50%. And we agreed on that with the national government, and by the time I left, works had started. So I didn't get into the complications of, who is doing, this is a national county government road, or, because sometimes it also became a bit political.
Isn't that something that needs to be fixed right now? Because I was listening to a conversation with governors and some senators as well. And there's conflict in some regions where, this will be done, or you don't even know that these people have started working on this project, and then the county wants to take credit. What can be done now that you're even sitting at a different office, as Speaker over the Senate?
I think the classification needs to be clear. You see, the Constitution is very clear, saying Class A, B, C roads belong to the national government. Right. Then D, downwards, belongs to the county government. What happened was that there was an attempt to reclassify the roads. So that is what brought conflict. And all these things rotate about resources, I can tell you. Yes. Because you see, the governors wanted money to be devolved because money follows functions. So we're arguing that once a function has been devolved, then funds should also be devolved. So it was a matter of, you see, the national government wants to hold on some of the money to fix the roads. The governors also wanted to get some money to fix the roads. But at the end of the day, I think it needs to be clear that, once the roads have been classified, and that was the bone of contention, then it's clear that ABC belongs to the national government, and D belongs to the county government. And where a county feels it cannot be able to do the roads, then the law allows you get into an agreement with the national government to then fix the road. Like I said, Mwanainji doesn't care
how it's done, as long as it's done.
As long as it's done.
You've mentioned politics and how it was a challenge because that was not a world you were in before. Right. Specifics, in what sense? Because for some county governments, we saw impeachment motions. For others, it was projects of benchmarking that saw MCAs that run away with millions of money as opposed to service delivery. What was a challenge for you? The
challenge for me is that when you are busy thinking very hard on how to support your people, the others who are planning on how to bring you down. So they will come up with all manner of propaganda, with all manner of stories, to just try to paint you in bad taste in the eyes of the public because they are eyeing your seats. For me, it was a question of, I did not belong to the same political party with my senator. At least, luckily, the woman rep we would belong to the same political party. So it's like the other political party was concentrating on bringing me down. So anything I did, they were more trying to find faults. I also had a very slim majority in the assembly. In fact, I started with a majority that was in opposition. That's where, you'll find the leader of majority was from an opposition party.
But isn't that the essence of democracy? Vibrancy, in that you have people checking you constantly.
It's true, but when you are checking objectively, it's different from when you are doing it maliciously. What the point I'm making is that, for example, the leader of majority would table my agenda. Normally, that is what should happen in a democracy. Like you see in the National Assembly, we have Duale, in the Senate we have Murkomen. He would normally table the government agenda, prosecute it, and make sure that it goes through. Here is a case where I had the leader of majority from ODM. Therefore, he would table my agenda and is the first one to oppose it. So then, it became very difficult to get things moving. So you're operating in a situation where the county assembly is blackmailing you. Either they want you to give them trips, or they want to pay some allowances for you to be able to pay. For them to be able to pass some of your bills. So you are ever in a crisis. You cannot focus on really what your manifesto was. You are busy managing.
So the politics of it took a toll.
Yeah, the politics of it took a toll. You are busy managing a crisis. Every day the assembly wants to shoot down anything that you are taking to the assembly.
So you feel that would slow you then down?
That would slow you down or deliberately. And like, you see, when people talk, now I understand, like, I'll be talking about it later, when you're talking about the maybe tyrant of numbers in quotes. When you have a majority, a clear majority in the House, it becomes easier for you to push your agenda. Because you see, as an executive, as a governor, as a president, you are the one who has gone to people and pledged that you are going to deliver certain services. The assemblies, including the National Assembly, the Senate, and the County Assembly, their role is legislation, representation, and oversight. So them, really, they will go there and talk, but at the end of the day, you can continue talking for 5 years. Okay. But you see, as a president, as a governor, you have to deliver. So when you have maybe an assembly that is slowing you down in service delivery, then it becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
So,
in terms of the functions that have been devolved and those that remain with the national government, are there some now, in hindsight, you think should have remained with the national government that have been devolved and vice versa?
I don't think so. I think the functions that were devolved, if effectively, implemented, then I think the counties have quite a lot to do. If you're talking about agriculture, if you're talking about health, if you're talking about water, you're talking about environment, some aspects of environment, there are also some shared functions, then that's a lot. And those are functions that really touch the lives of the people. I know where counties were feeling a bit uncomfortable, and again, that's something that maybe needs to be properly addressed. Aspects, because you see, like agriculture, the national government remained with standards and policy. But you find cases where, for example, the national government purchases fertilizer, which is a fully devolved function. So that's something that needs to be agreed with the county governments. If they are purchasing fertilizer, for example, how do they also relate? How do they coordinate with the county governments so that when the county government is also purchasing the same, and it's going to the same farmer, it is properly coordinated.
And even with basic things such as storage, because we've seen that problem where we're having drought in one part of the country, people do not have food. On the other, there's a surplus, but then they're being chased away because there's no storage.
Yes.
And the county government says hands are tied in as far as putting up these structures.
Yeah, that's what we're saying, that, there needs, okay, we're all in a learning curve, and this is now the time to relook at what were some of the challenges, and I'm happy that we're talking about them. For example, when the counties were formed, it did not mean that you now cut off the umbilical cord completely. There are certain aspects that you still need the national government to come in. And in the case, even the Constitution was clear that the national government was going to build the capacity of the county governments. And therefore, those are some of the areas, for example, if there are challenges of storage, and the national government has funds to do that, can they be able to negotiate with the counties so that they assist the counties? But again, remember, we started on a rough note where we had a lot of conflict between the executive and the COG, and then the National Assembly and everybody, and it's like everybody was fighting everyone.
The upper house, lower house.
Upper house, all those kind of things. But I think this is the time now to look at some of the challenges that, were there, correct them. Because at the end of the day, it's that Mwanainji who requires a service. You see, that is where we should all focus, whether you are a governor, a senator, a member of the county assembly, or, a woman representative, a county member of parliament. Right. We should focus on that Mwanainji. Is he getting the service? And then these other things are just the stories that come up.
Yeah. Healthcare is an important area. Devolved, yes, but we have seen a lot of back and forth. Initially, in fact, the health workers did not want that function staying with the county government. At least the admin aspect wanted that to be the national government. And yet a crucial aspect for human life. Do you think there needs to be a change in as far as how we've managed healthcare with the devolved governments?
I don't think that recentralizing the health function will sort out the problem. The problems of health were even there when it was still managed by the national government.
But now they're not getting better.
It just needs a bit of coordination. One, if you ask me, to be very honest, there are also health workers who didn't want decentralization, health decentralized, because they didn't want closer supervision. Because you see, again, the PS is the one that is going to respond to matters of health, that are happening in the dispensaries and health, that bureaucracy. So there are also doctors who would not come for, say, maybe an hour, and then he goes to his clinic. But you see now, when it was decentralized, when it was devolved, the supervision is close. The governor can decide to go to all the health facilities in a day just to check that everything is happening. But I know there have been challenges in terms of, recruitment of, for example, doctors, recruitment of nurses, you know, supplies
and
of
we've seen several
drugs.
strikes as well.
The strikes are coming on, and of course some of them are, you know, politically instigated. But I think recentralizing is not the solution. They just need, all the stakeholders need to sit down and agree where there's a problem, we fix it. Because the moment you start recentralizing, I can tell you for a fact, if health came back to the national government, the next one will be agriculture. The next one will be...
We'll start reversing.
We'll start reversing everything. So we can still fix the problem where it is.
Yeah. Do you think resources have followed functions that have been devolved? Because a number of the governors I've spoken to so far all go to speak about not enough money coming to the counties, and even that the money that comes through comes late, which really affects work.
Of course, no, resources can never be enough. If you ask anyone, he will tell you, give us a lot of money, we want to do this, because the more you get, the more needs that arise. But again, of course, there's been delays in release of funds. You can blame both sides. Sometimes the Treasury has had challenges maybe in collecting enough money to be able to send to the counties on time. But again, the problem, some counties are also facing challenges because for the funds to be released, there are also certain requirements that counties are supposed to meet. Last week we were with the control of budget, we were with the Auditor General, and those are the issues that they were raising. You see, because there are certain things that you're supposed to comply with before they release the next tranche to you. Now, some counties are doing very well, some are not doing well at all, where they're told you're supposed to submit certain, for example, documentation within that certain period. When you don't do it, then the control of the budget will not approve the funds to come. So it's a two-way traffic that, you know, counties also need to improve in terms of their requisitions for money to go to the counties meeting the requirements, but the National Treasury also needs to move. In fact, this matter, we've been putting a lot of pressure on the National Treasury as a Senate, because you see that is again our business, to ensure that counties get money on time and that they're functioning well. So we've also been putting pressure. So it's a concern, and I'm hoping that as we go for the 5th Devolution Conference next week on 23rd, these are some of the things that we need to discuss candidly in that conference. Because
with devolution, some of the unfortunate things we've seen devolved as well is what we see at the national government level, corruption. And the county governments, once in a while, will hear all of these stories, even with the Auditor General talking about expenditure. And you, as governor, came under sharp focus on expenditure as well. And what became the infamous story about wheelbarrows, and you defended the actions taken at the time, which takes us back to the question of, even with this money is going back to the counties, do you feel in your time that was used best it could have for the sake of the wananchi? And even now that we're not seeing county governments running amok with this?
There are two aspects here. You know, when you're talking about resources going to the counties, you must then differentiate between recurrent and development. A lot of counties are having problems, including Bungoma when I was a governor, of having inherited a human capital, having inherited staff from the defunct local authorities, and we could do nothing about it because we were protected by the law. So we inherited staff, we find a job that's supposed to be done by one person being done by 5 people or 6 people. So we have corridor employees, you have people just hanging around, they are on the payroll. So, and you see, you can't suspend paying salaries because the next thing you'll see is strikes, people demonstrating up to your office. So you have to sort out the salaries, then now whatever is remaining then goes to development. So that is a matter that I think we must confront at some point. I remember there was a rationalization that was done, but nobody wanted to touch staff because we were going to an election. Now that the election is behind us... So
you have a huge wage bill still?
We have a huge, and if you ask most governors, they will tell you it's a big, huge bill that they have to deal with. And then I told you again about politics. You know, like, you know, when people are talking about those things of wheelbarrows in Bungoma, I can tell you for a fact that politics took an upper hand, and therefore nobody wanted to listen to reason, because a wheelbarrow costs 3,200. We had bought several wheelbarrows. So I don't see why. And in any case, I've explained this over and over again, that you see what happened is I'm the one who had set up an audit to find out how ministries were operating. So when I saw a wheelbarrow costing 109, I was also concerned, and I wanted an explanation. And they came and explained to me, well, this was not an ordinary wheelbarrow. This was material used, you know, to what now famous, you know, because when I use it, the people, non-carcinogenic. You can go and check what non-carcinogenic means. It just means that, you know, you are making sure that you're using material that, you know, will not have, I mean, is not cancerous. And you cannot export, I was a PS in livestock, you cannot export any meat outside Kenya, or you cannot export if you have not used material that's non-carcinogenic. Right. So, but you see now, because of it was politics, people ran away with it, said they went and bought ordinary wheelbarrows that carry, you know, sand, and said, you see, this is what they do. So we are not saying that, in any case, okay, the matter is in court. We're not saying that there's no corruption. It's just that corruption also crept into the counties. Most governors, you know, are trying to deal with it. And again, remember, you are dealing with a bureaucracy. You are dealing with a bureaucracy, you would put measures in place. Yeah. But again, there are those that we know will do funny things. And one of the areas that we are recommending, for example, was revenue collection. We're saying that we wanted to automate, and most counties, I know they are automating their revenue collection because of a lot of pilferage, a lot of theft happening there. We want to, IFMIS was very effective. And unfortunately, it has also been on and off. But it's a very effective system where you minimize human contact with money and people. So that if it's a tender, you just go to the website, get it, and, you know, you will minimize the instance of corruption.
Yes.